Prepare to have your mind completely reoriented. The concept of an interior might be an absolute illusion. What we perceive as the inner substance of things, that voluminous, three-dimensional core where objects reside, may not be a foundational truth. It could be a mirage, a helpful narrative we construct because we are confined to a specific vantage point. Allow me to clarify this notion and share why my extensive work on black holes and quantum gravity has led me to this inevitable conclusion. From childhood, we inherit an instinctive model of existence. Objects possess an external shell and an internal content. An apple is enclosed by a peel, harboring its pulp within. A chamber is defined by its external walls, encircling an internal void. The cosmos itself is imagined as a grand container, with galaxies and stars adrift within its spacious interior. This feels self-evident, basic, indisputable, yet it is incorrect. Or more precisely, it is not fundamentally true. The notion that reality lacks an interior emerges directly from the holographic principle, a concept I have dedicated a significant portion of my professional life to exploring and advocating. It stands as one of the most bizarre and counterintuitive propositions in all of physics, yet the evidence supporting it is immense and compelling. Let us begin with black holes, as that is where this journey started for me. Consider a black hole in the conventional manner. You visualize an event horizon, a spherical border, and within that border lies the black hole's interior. This is where the fierce gravitational field resides, where space-time is profoundly warped, where anything crossing the horizon is irresistibly drawn toward the central singularity. The interior appears authentic. It is the destination for infalling matter, a zone of space seemingly as real as the region outside. This is the story told by general relativity. Einstein's equations depict both the external and internal geometry. However, a profound dilemma arises, the information paradox. When an object plunges into a black hole, its information appears to vanish into the interior. Subsequently, as the black hole evaporates via Hawking radiation, that information seems to be permanently erased. This contradicts quantum mechanics, which insists that information must be preserved. I spent many years grappling with this paradox, and the resolution I ultimately embraced was revolutionary. The interior does not exist as an autonomous region. The information never truly enters because there is no inside, not in any fundamental description. All data concerning the black hole, every quantum of information about what was absorbed, all quantum degrees of freedom, are inscribed upon the two-dimensional surface of the event horizon. The horizon is where the physics genuinely resides. The interior is a derived notion, an emergent description advantageous for specific computations, but not fundamentally real. This is the principle of black hole complementarity. One can describe the black hole either through the degrees of freedom on its horizon or via an internal geometry. But these are not two distinct realities. They are two complementary depictions of the same underlying physics. The horizon description is fundamental. The interior description is emergent. When I first suggested this, many believed I had lost my mind. Stephen Hawking himself disagreed with me for years. The idea that a black hole's interior wasn't real appeared to contradict everything general relativity taught us. Yet, gradually, the evidence accumulated. Jacob Bekenstein demonstrated that black hole entropy is proportional to the area of its horizon, not the volume of its interior. This was a monumental clue. Entropy quantifies information, the count of possible quantum states. If entropy scales with area, it signifies the information is stored on the surface, not within the volume. Then came the monumental breakthrough, the ADS-CFT correspondence, discovered by Juan Maldacena. This revelation made everything lucid. Maldacena proved that a gravitational theory within a higher dimensional space is perfectly equivalent to a non-gravitational quantum field theory living on the boundary of that space. The boundary possesses one fewer dimension. It is a surface, not a volume. All the physics of the interior, including black holes, gravity, curved spacetime, is encoded within the quantum state of that boundary theory. The interior emerges from the boundary. It is not fundamental. When you pose the appropriate questions to the boundary theory, when you structure its information in the correct manner, an entire extra spatial dimension materializes, complete with all the phenomena of gravity and black holes. This is holography in its most exact form. The three-dimensional interior is a holographic projection from a two-dimensional surface. The interior has no independent existence. It is a method for describing patterns within the boundary theory. To make this tangible, in ADS CFT, a black hole can exist within the interior, or bulk, space. That black hole has a horizon and, in the traditional narrative, an interior where things are trapped. Yet, in the boundary theory, there is no interior, no extra dimension. There is solely a quantum field theory in one fewer dimension. The black hole in the bulk corresponds to a thermal state in the boundary theory. When you hurl an object into the bulk black hole, in the boundary description you are merely adding an excitation to that thermal state. Nothing vanishes inside anything else. The information remains within the boundary theory, evolving unitarily, respecting quantum mechanics. The interior of the black hole is an emergent concept. It is a useful framework for organizing physics when asking certain types of questions. For instance, when imagining yourself as an observer falling through the horizon, but it is not foundational. At the deepest stratum, there is no interior. You might protest, but I could fall into a black hole. I would experience crossing the horizon and descending toward the singularity. Surely that interior is real for me, even if not for an external observer. And you would be correct, in a sense. The interior description holds validity from your perspective. But here is the crucial insight. Your experience of falling is not incompatible with your information being encoded on the horizon. Both descriptions are true. They merely describe the same physics from different viewpoints. It is analogous to quantum mechanics, where light is both a wave and a particle. It is not that it is one or the other at different times. These are two complementary ways of describing the same underlying quantum entity. The same applies to a black hole. The horizon description and the interior description are complementary. However, at the fundamental level, the horizon description is the one that preserves all principles of quantum mechanics. It is the framework where information is manifestly conserved, where everything is unitary, where paradoxes vanish. Therefore, it is the fundamental one. This implies that reality, at its deepest foundation, has no interior. There are no hidden inner realms where information can be sequestered. Everything resides on surfaces, on boundaries. The universe is fundamentally holographic. Let us extend this beyond black holes. If the holographic principle is true, it applies universally. Every region of space should have its information content bounded by the area of its boundary, not its volume. Consider a room. In the ordinary picture, it is a three-dimensional volume. You can place items within it, books on shelves, furniture, air molecules, all occupying the interior space. Yet, according to holography, all information about everything in that room is actually encoded on its walls, floor, and ceiling, the two-dimensional boundary. The interior is emergent. The room's three-dimensionality is a holographic projection from information on its boundaries. There is no fundamental interior where things exist. There is only information on surfaces. From that information, the appearance of an interior manifests. This sounds ludicrous. How can my coffee mug, situated in the room's center, truly be encoded on the walls? But that is precisely what holography asserts. The mug is not fundamentally located in an interior volume. It is a pattern within the holographic information on the boundary that we interpret as a mug in the interior. The same applies to the entire cosmos. Our universe possesses a cosmological horizon, a boundary beyond which we can never see due to cosmic expansion and dark energy. According to holography, all information about our observable universe is encoded on that cosmological horizon. We believe we inhabit a vast three-dimensional volume of space teeming with galaxies, dark matter, and energy. But fundamentally, we are patterns within a two-dimensional holographic code on the cosmic horizon. The interior of the universe, the bulk space we think we occupy, is emergent. It has no independent existence. Reality has no inside because the inside is not fundamental. It is a derived concept, a useful fiction, an emergent property arising from how information is structured on boundaries. Now let me address what I consider the most profound aspect, the link between the absence of an interior and quantum entanglement. The very reason interiors emerge is due to entanglement patterns on the boundary. When quantum degrees of freedom on a boundary are entangled in specific configurations, those entanglement patterns can be naturally described as geometric relationships within a higher dimensional space. Strongly entangled degrees of freedom correspond to proximate points in the emergent interior. Weakly entangled degrees correspond to distant points. The entire geometry of the interior, its size, shape, whether it contains black holes, emerges from the pattern of quantum entanglement on the boundary. This is formalized by the Ryu-Takayanagi formula, which relates entanglement entropy on the boundary to geometric areas in the bulk. So, when I state there is no inside, I mean there is no inside at the fundamental level. The fundamental description is the boundary with its quantum degrees of freedom and their entanglements. The interior materializes when you coarse grain, when you examine collective properties of entangled degrees. It is similar to how temperature emerges from molecular motion. Fundamentally, there are only molecules in motion. Temperature does not exist. But when you zoom out, when you average over multitudes of molecules, temperature appears as a useful emergent concept. The same holds for the interior of space. Fundamentally, there are only quantum degrees of freedom on boundaries, entangled in complex patterns. The interior does not exist. But when you zoom out, when you organize the information in particular ways, the interior emerges as a useful descriptive tool. This carries profound implications for how we conceive of locality. In physics, locality means objects interact only with their immediate neighbors. If I push a chair, it does not instantly affect a chair across the room. Influences propagate through space at finite speeds. But if space itself is emergent, if there is no fundamental interior, then locality must also be emergent. At the fundamental boundary level, there is no space, no notion of nearby or far away. There are only quantum degrees of freedom and their interactions. Locality appears within the emergent interior description. Points that are adjacent in the interior correspond to strongly entangled degrees of freedom on the boundary. When an event at one interior point influences a nearby point, what is genuinely occurring is an interaction between entangled degrees of freedom on the boundary. This entirely reverses our intuition. We regard locality as fundamental and non-local quantum entanglement as bizarre. But in truth, entanglement is fundamental, and locality is the emergent concept requiring explanation. Let me share another consequence of a reality without interiors. It resolves the firewall paradox. This paradox, proposed by Joe Polchinski and colleagues, suggested a potential wall of high-energy radiation at a black hole's event horizon that would incinerate anything attempting to enter. The paradox stemmed from attempting to locate information as it escapes via Hawking radiation. If it is entangled with outgoing radiation and also with the interior, contradictions with quantum mechanics arise. However, if there is no fundamental interior, the paradox dissolves. The degrees of freedom we describe as being inside the black hole are identical to those we describe as being in the outgoing radiation. They are not separate entities. They are two descriptions of the same thing. This is the E.R. Kang's EPR idea that Juan Maldacena and I proposed. The black hole's interior is connected to the exterior via quantum wormholes, Einstein-Rosen bridges. These wormholes are the geometric manifestation of quantum entanglement. When radiation is entangled with a black hole, a wormhole connects them. The interior and exterior are not separate regions. They are linked by entanglement, by quantum correlations. Thus, there is no paradox about information being in two places simultaneously. It resides in one place on the boundary, but can be described differently depending on your perspective. The concept that reality lacks an interior also connects to deep mysteries within quantum mechanics itself. One of the greatest enigmas is the measurement problem. When you measure a quantum system, the wave function collapses. The system transitions from a superposition of states to one definite state. But what triggers the collapse? Where does measurement occur? Does it necessitate a conscious observer? These questions have haunted quantum mechanics since its inception. If the universe is holographic, if the interior is emergent, then perhaps measurement is emergent as well. At the fundamental boundary level, there is no collapse. The quantum state evolves unitarily and smoothly, adhering to the Schrödinger equation. No jumps, no collapses, no mysteries. Measurement and collapse appear only within the emergent interior description when you coarse-grain and disregard most quantum information. From that limited perspective, it seems as if the wave function collapses. But at the fundamental boundary level, everything is continuous and seamless. This would resolve the measurement problem. It is not a fundamental feature of reality. It is an artifact of employing an emergent description, of pretending an interior exists when, fundamentally, it does not. I must clarify something essential. When I assert reality has no inside, I am not invalidating your subjective experience. You experience being inside a room, a building, the universe. That experience is genuine. It is simply not fundamental. The emergent description is valid for characterizing your experience. You are an emergent structure within an emergent interior. From your perspective, the interior is real. But at the deepest stratum of physics, where we articulate the fundamental laws, there is no interior. There is only information on boundaries. Consider the analogy of temperature. Is temperature real? Certainly, in the sense you can feel it, measure it, utilize it in calculations. But it is not fundamental. It emerges from something deeper. The same applies to the interior of reality. Here is another perspective. Imagine a video game. On screen, you explore a three-dimensional world. Your avatar traverses rooms, landscapes, interacts with objects in 3D space. But what is truly happening? The game operates on a computer processing bits of information according to its programming. The 3D world on screen is a representation, a method of displaying that information. The interior of the game world does not exist in the computer's memory as a 3D volume. It is encoded in bits, memory addresses, data structures. The holographic universe is analogous. We experience a 3D world with interiors and volumes. But at the fundamental level of physical law, reality is encoded like software on boundaries. The 3D interior is the display, the user interface, not the underlying reality. This is not to claim we inhabit a simulation. The point is not that a programmer created us. The point is that the dimensionality we experience is not the dimensionality of the fundamental description. Reality is holographic. This has ramifications for everything: how we conceive of space and time, gravity, quantum mechanics, the very nature of existence. If there is no fundamental interior, many puzzles and paradoxes plaguing physics may simply dissolve. The Big Bang singularity might not be real. It could be an artifact of applying the emergent interior description at scales where it fails. At the fundamental boundary level, there may be no singularity, only a specific quantum state. The problem of quantum gravity, reconciling general relativity with quantum mechanics, might become more tractable if we cease attempting to quantize the interior geometry and instead focus on the boundary degrees of freedom. Gravity may not be a fundamental force at all, merely an emergent phenomenon within the interior. Even consciousness and the hard problem of subjective experience might appear different if we seriously accept that we are emergent structures within an emergent interior, patterns in fundamental boundary information rather than fundamental entities in fundamental space. I have spent decades contemplating these ideas, working through the mathematics, debating colleagues. Everything I have learned points in this same direction. Black holes taught us information resides on horizons, not in interiors. ADS-CFT explicitly demonstrated how interiors emerge from boundaries. Entanglement provides the mechanism for geometry's genesis. The evidence is overwhelming. Reality has no inside, not at the fundamental level. The interior is emergent, holographic, a projection from information on boundaries. This is one of the most profound insights in the history of physics. We have discovered that one of the most basic features of our experience, the three-dimensionality of space, the existence of interiors and volumes, is not fundamental. It is an illusion, akin to how the solidity of matter is an illusion emerging from quantum fields. When you touch a table, it feels solid. Yet we know it is predominantly empty space, with tiny atomic nuclei separated by vast distances held together by electromagnetic forces. The solidity is emergent, not fundamental. Similarly, when you observe your surroundings, space appears three-dimensional. Objects seem to possess insides. But this is emergent, not fundamental. At the deepest level, reality is two-dimensional information on boundaries. The three-dimensional world, with all its interiors, is a holographic projection. I find this breathtakingly beautiful. It is a unification, a simplification. Instead of requiring separate descriptions for physics in the interior and on boundaries, we possess one fundamental description, the boundary. Everything else emerges from it. It is also humbling. We believed we understood space, that our intuitions about dimensionality and interiors were reliable. Yet the universe is far stranger than we ever conceived. We are living within a hologram, experiencing an emergent interior that does not exist fundamentally. And it is exhilarating. We are still refining the details. We lack a complete holographic description of our universe. We do not fully comprehend how consciousness and observers integrate into this picture. We are unsure of the exact nature of the boundary degrees of freedom, but progress continues. Each year we deepen our understanding of how interiors emerge from boundaries, how entanglement crafts geometry, how quantum information gives birth to space-time. The next generation of physicists will advance these ideas. They will develop more precise mathematical formulations, discover new experimental tests for holography, and uncover implications we cannot yet imagine. But the core insight will endure. Reality has no inside. The interior is emergent. The fundamental description is holographic, with information living on boundaries, not within volumes. This transforms everything. It alters how we think about black holes, the cosmos, the very essence of reality itself. And it all originates from taking quantum mechanics and gravity seriously, from pursuing the mathematics wherever it leads, from having the courage to abandon our intuitions when the evidence compels us. So, the next time you gaze upon an object, a room, or the sky, remember, the interior you perceive is not fundamental. It is a holographic projection, an emergent description, a useful fiction. The underlying reality is stranger, simpler, and more magnificent. Reality has no inside.